Good morning. It's July 24th, 2025. I am reading an article right now that, I lost on the screen. There it is. It's from the New York Times that it's an opinion essay by Barry Levine. Says, I covered the Epstein case for decades. There are 9 questions we actually need answered. And I was just up to number 7. And the question is, what did investigators find in Mr. Epstein's safe, computers, and other property? That is a good question because an evidence inventory made during multiple investigations of Mr. Epstein, I'm quoting from the article now, by law enforcement resulted in a 3-page index generated by the FBI, according to the index. The evidence included 40 computer and electronic devices, 26 storage drives, more than 70 CDs, and 6 recording devices, along with approximately 60 pieces of physical evidence, including photos, travel logs, and employee logs. The records, according to ABC News, also included 3 disks containing the outcome of court-authorized intercepts of a phone number previously belonging to Miss Maxwell. That's Ghislaine. This evidence represents a wealth of potential detail, and we're being denied access to it. Why hold this material back if properly redacted? He asks. That's a good question. I mean, that's a lot of data. 40 computer drives or computers, 26 storage drives, 70 CDs, 60 other pieces of physical evidence that are hidden from us because what he was ripping his own CDs off of YouTube for his own music. No, that's not it. There are things that they recorded themselves and kept track of. What does a guy who's working on Wall Street swinging deals need with a bunch of recordings? What is he recording? Well, obviously he's recording children. He's putting things out there or gathering things that are already out there from somebody else. Because there's a lot of sick people in the world. A lot of them. I like to steal that from Donald Trump myself. I mean, he does turn a phrase once in a while. There's a lot of sick people in the world. Nobody says it quite like him, but I got to steal that. And he's one of them. One of the latest news stories I got in my inbox, I got this today, was from the FBI. I'm on the FBI's mailing list. Well, anybody, not on their watch list, their mailing list. Anybody can get on the FBI mailing list. All you have to do is sign up for it. It's great. I get all kinds of great information there that just doesn't seem to show up in any other media. But this was a press release today, yesterday's. Operation Grayskull culminates in lengthy sentences for managers of dark website dedicated to sexual abuse of children. The fact is, there's a lot of sickos out there, and Jeffrey Epstein was one of them. He dealt with them. Did he sell pictures to people? Probably not. He had plenty of money, but could he have facilitated these kinds of operations? Yeah, maybe. Did he purchase material? Maybe. That might be what's on those drives that they want to look at. So I'm going to read this article that I got today. And it says, Operation Grayskull eradicated 4 dark web child abuse sites and led to the conviction of 18 offenders to date who have collectively received more than 300 years in prison. Today, the Justice Department announced the results of Operation Grayskull, a highly successful joint effort between the Department of Justice and the FBI that resulted in the dismantling of 4 dark websites dedicated to images and videos containing child sexual abuse material. CSAM is their acronym. To date, the operation has led to the convictions of 18 offenders, including a Minnesota man who was sentenced yesterday to 250 months in prison and lifetime supervised release for his involvement with one of these dark websites. He was also ordered to pay $23,000 in restitution. Today's announcement sends a clear warning to those who exploit and abuse children. You will not find safe haven, even on the dark web, said Acting Assistant Attorney General Matthew R. Gagliotti of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. These offenders thought that they could act without consequences, but they were wrong. Thanks to the relentless determination of our prosecutors and law enforcement partners, we have exposed these perpetrators for who they are, eliminated their websites, and brought justice to countless victims. This operation represents one of the most significant strikes ever made against online child exploitation networks, said FBI Director Kash Patel. We've not only dismantled dangerous platforms on the dark web, but we've also brought key perpetrators to justice and delivered a powerful message. You cannot hide behind anonymity to harm children. Yesterday's sentencing reaffirms our steadfast commitment to protecting our children, the most vulnerable among us, from those who exploit and harm them through the despicable trade in child sexual abuse material, said U.S. Attorney Hayden P. O'Byrne for the Southern District of Florida. Thomas Peter Katsampis and his co-conspirators ran some of the dark web's most heinous networks, enabling horrific crimes against innocent victims. But Operation Grayskull has shut these sites down and delivered justice. We applaud the FBI and our international partners for their tireless work, and let this be a clear warning. We will relentlessly pursue and prosecute anyone engaged in such atrocities, no matter how they attempt to cover their tracks. Bravo. That's what I want to hear. Thomas Peter Katsampis, 52, of Eagan, Minnesota, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise and conspiracy to distribute child pornography on February 27th. According to court documents, Katsampis joined a dark website dedicated to CSAM in 2022, advertised and distributed CSAM over the website, including CSAM depicting prepubescent children, and eventually worked his way up to a staff position on the website, which, among other things, involved moderating the site, enforcing the site's rules for posting CSAM, and advising the site's users about how to post CSAM. Once again, that is child sexual abuse material. In addition to Katsampis, 8 individuals have been convicted and sentenced in the Southern District of Florida for their involvement in running the primary site targeted by Operation Grayskull. Here are those 8 people, the defendants, their residence, and their case status. Let's start with Selwyn David Rosenstein of Boynton Beach, Florida. Pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography, 5 counts of advertisement of child pornography and possession of child pornography. Sentenced on December 12, 2022 to 28 years in prison and ordered to pay $80,500 in restitution to victims of his offense. Next is Matthew Brandon Garrell of Raleigh, North Carolina. Pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography. Sentenced on August 1st, 2023 to 20 years and 10 months in prison and ordered to pay $158,500 in restitution to victims of his offense. Robert Preston Boyles of Clarksville, Tennessee, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography, sentenced on August 15th, 2023 to 23 years and 4 months in prison and ordered to pay $7,500 in restitution to victims of his offense. Gregory Malcolm Good of Silver Springs, Nevada, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography. He was sentenced on August 22nd, 2023 to 25 years and 10 months in prison and ordered to pay $93,500 in restitution to victims of his offense. William Michael Spearman of Madison, Alabama, sentenced on January 23, 2024 to life in prison and ordered to pay $123,400 in restitution to victims of his offense. Joseph Addison Martin of Tahuya, Washington, pleaded guilty to engaging in a child exploitation enterprise, sentenced on April 18, 2024 to 42 years in prison and ordered to pay $174,500 in restitution to victims of his offense. John Robert Stewart of Milton, Washington, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography, sentenced on April 18, 2024 to 23 years and 9 months in prison and ordered to pay $19,500 in restitution to victims for his offense. Then finally, Keith David McIntosh of Grand Rapids, Michigan, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to advertise child pornography and conspiracy to distribute child pornography, both as a person with a prior conviction for possession of child pornography, sentenced on December 19th, 2024 to 55 years in prison. So they got these people off the street. That's really great. But the thing is, there's a whole lot more than these 8 people out there contributing to that website and websites like it. And Jeffrey Epstein may have been one of them. He might have been one of those people who facilitated such websites. The fact is, there's people out there who think this stuff is okay. They're really sick. They need to be stopped. They need to be taken out of society one way or another. So we got rid of some of them, but there's still people out there. And that's the problem. That's why you'll see support for Donald Trump, because there's people who actually think that, oh, if he was involved with Jeffrey Epstein and he had sex with some minors, that's not a big thing. That's so what? But he was convicted on 33 counts, felony counts for some kind of fraud, right? Yeah, but that's not a big thing either. He's the president. He can do that. That's the mindset. That's what happens. When you have a cult and you have a cult leader and you have sick people supporting the cult leader. But I'm going to get back to the rest of this article because there's way more to it. The website's leaders advertised and distributed CSAM, promulgated rules for the website, enforced the rules by banning or scolding users who violated them, meaning shared stuff offline or did something to put the dark web site at risk. That's what violating use or violating rules means to these people. The website's leaders held staff meetings, recruited members to serve as staff members, recommended users for promotion, edited and deleted users' posts, praised individuals for participating in and contributing to the website, kept records of CSAM posts made by individual members, and paid for and maintained the website servers, among other things. Paid for. With what money? Whose money? How much money was involved? What were the levels of payment? These are questions that I don't have answers to. Operation Grayskull resulted in the dismantling of a total of 4 sites dedicated to images and videos depicting child sexual abuse. These websites were some of the most egregious on the dark web, and they included sections specifically dedicated to infants and toddlers, as well as depictions of violence, sadism, and torture. The websites also contained advice on how to avoid detection by law enforcement, for example, by using sophisticated technologies. So this is what sophisticated technology is protecting. You know, maybe be careful of, or the people who make these sophisticated technologies should be more careful about who they're selling them to. Maybe they should be required by law to say, hey, we sold this thing, this program that hides activity to this guy or that person, you know, so that they can keep track of it. But because the only people who really need a lot of privacy are people who are hiding something illegal. If you're not hiding anything illegal, we should be able to open up your Facebook and find out everything about you, and it shouldn't cause you any harm, you know, unless, of course, you've got some weird stalker who's after you. Then, you know, just don't go on Facebook. That's it. Make your little Facebook thing private. In other judicial districts around the country, 9 additional individuals have been convicted for their involvement with these websites, including the following. Charles Hand of Aberdeen, Maryland, was prosecuted in the District of Maryland and was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. Michael Ibarra of Wenatchee, Washington, was prosecuted in the Eastern District of Washington and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Clay Trimble of Fordyce, Arkansas, was prosecuted in the Eastern District of Arkansas and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. David Craig of Houston, Texas, was prosecuted in the Southern District of Texas and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Robert Rella of Chesapeake, Virginia, was prosecuted in the Eastern District of Virginia and was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in prison. Samuel Hicks of Fort Wayne, Indiana, was prosecuted in the Northern District of Indiana and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Richard Smith of Dallas, Texas, was prosecuted in the Eastern District of Texas and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Patrick Harrison of Grand Rapids, Michigan, was prosecuted in the Western District of Michigan and was sentenced to 5 years and 10 months in prison. Thomas Galis of Webbers Falls, Oklahoma, was prosecuted in the Eastern District of Oklahoma, and his sentence is pending. 2 other individuals in the United States died before being charged for their involvement with the websites. The operation also resulted in arrests in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Estonia, Belgium, and South Africa. The FBI's Child Exploitation Operational Unit and Miami Field Office, West Palm Beach Residence Agency investigated the cases. Acting Deputy Chief Kyle P. Reynolds and Trial Attorney William G. Clayman of the Justice Department's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section and former U.S. Attorney General Schiller of the Southern District of Florida coordinated the operation and prosecuted the defendants in the Southern District of Florida. The rest of the article goes on to thank a couple of individual FBI field offices around the country. And the case was brought as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse. So here's what I want you to think about is those last 9 people and the 8 before that I read off, all these places, who they are, where they lived: Aberdeen, Maryland; Wenatchee, Washington; Fordyce, Arkansas; Houston, Texas; Fort Wayne, Indiana; Dallas; Grand Rapids; Weber Falls, Oklahoma; Chesapeake, Virginia. There's a lot of people living in those places, and somebody knew all these guys. Somebody is related to them. And they're dealing with whatever fallout comes with a family member being arrested for this, because, of course, they're guilty. And if they had any friends, they don't have them anymore. But the other thing is, who was in on it with them in these places that we haven't caught yet? There's still a network out there. It wasn't just these people that we've already mentioned in the United States that were out there. There's a lot more. Who are they? Where are they? And how do we get rid of them? That's a big question. I see I have no viewers today. Hopefully you're catching this after the fact. I'm Mike Rembus. Thanks for watching and listening, and be safe.